Name your pronouns for the people.
Hi, I'm Tucker Wooley, he, they. I'm an artist person, art school student for not much longer, um, storyboard artist, internet human.
Sick. I am Val. This is just my well, on Zoom, there's like a different name up. It's my legal name, but I prefer Val and I go by all pronouns. So doesn't really matter. Um, yeah, you're one of our vendors.
Hmm.
That's pretty exciting.
It is exciting. I'm super stoked.
Yeah. So, well, one, I want to ask, how old are you?
I'm 23. I'm an old man and I'm 23.
I'm 19. I turned 20 in
Cool.
September.
Nice. I turned 24, oh my God, in December. Um, December 28th. 3 days after Christmas, 3 days before New Year's.
Are you a
It's a
Capricorn?
stressful birthday. Yeah, I'm like the least Capricorn I've ever met. Um, but also like that's supposed to be a Capricorn stereotype. That's kind of like an all zodiac sign stereotype. I feel like is that they don't think that it applies to them.
Yeah, I totally get that.
Where are you from?
I'm an LA native, I suppose. I was born in San Francisco, but we moved when I was a little baby, and we've been in the Valley ever since. And right now I go to Otis, which is an art school.
You go to
Up,
Otis?
yeah, I go to Otis. It's a thing.
That's so cool.
Thanks. It's a cool place. Uh, I have a lot of feelings about like my art school education, and I could talk about it for a long time, but I won't. But
Oh, we could
basically,
totally talk about it. Oh, we could. This
if
is an
that's
interview,
interesting.
baby. We could totally talk about it.
It's been an interesting experience because I feel like I've definitely gotten the best version of it um in comparison to just like other people that I know, and other classmates have just had like pretty wildly different experiences, and not even just at Otis, but just with like all art schools. Um, it's an interesting machine to be like part of, and also I've recently been doing like student advocacy stuff at Otis, and that's just been interesting because I feel like I'm really close to how everything is moving, uh, and it's weird to see all of that like working.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I uh I like it over here. And yeah, so now I'm in Westchester in an apartment, and for not much longer because I'm a senior and I'm gonna graduate soon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for like, I feel like Otis to me, because for the, what do you do? Like, what's your major for Otis? Is it like graphic design?
I'm in animation, and that's under like the digital media banner they call it. So like it's I'm just drawing cartoons all day basically. And yeah, there's also under digital media is I think I think communication arts. Yeah, communication arts is under there, and that's the illustration majors, and they're like they branch off into graphic design and other stuff like that, book art,
That's
stuff
so
like that.
cool. Yeah. There was a while in my high school career where I genuinely was like, I'm gonna do communication, graphic design, fashion design, one of those little thingies, right? And I was
Hmm.
looking into Otis and I was looking into FITM, and I did an internship for FITM for something. And
Oh, that's cool.
yeah, I like FITM. I do think that the inside of the building is a bit too gray. It's a
Hmm.
really gray building, which makes zero sense
Yeah.
if it's a design school, but whatever.
Hmm. I,
And
I I feel that sometimes at Otis. I think that they've been better about it in the last like 4 years that I've been there. They added some color, like even since I had toured it first. But at first I was like, this is a very like white, like colored place.
Yeah. I always saw Otis as like one of those like weird, like to me, it was like the USC of art school, I feel like, because I always hear that's hard to get in.
It's funny because like I it is a little bit like the USC of art schools in some ways, kind of, especially like how close it is to LMU and everything. Like we get kind of that vibe, but it's also just so small and trying to do so much in such a small space. It's like Disneyland. I always liken it to Disneyland in that Disneyland was never meant to occupy that amount of space. Like it's really not that big, especially in comparison to the one in Florida, which was originally designed to be like a city. Like Walt Disney wanted it to be like a working city. But like Otis was just this like tiny square of land that we're trying to like squeeze all these different majors into and do all this crazy stuff, and it's just like bursting at the seams, I feel like. But yeah, the acceptance rate has also gone because they've been trying to expand so much. Like the acceptance rate has gone down or up. Yeah, the acceptance rate has gone up like dramatically ever since I got in there. So I got in there at a time where it was probably like a little bit easier to get in, and like more people were just getting in statistically.
Yeah.
Um,
But
so I'm lucky.
I imagine with art school though that it's interesting with art school, or at least from what I've seen from like old documentaries that I can't remember, like the titles, so I remember seeing them, is that like art school kind of puts a weird standard, like if your style doesn't fit and they kind of critique you, even though that's your style. I imagine that has to be like frustrating, right?
Yeah, it's tough because like I think that Otis is probably better about this in general than other schools that I've just heard of. Like having not been to those places, I really have no idea. But like I've heard that our kind of like Romeo and Juliet rival school a little bit is Art Center in Pasadena. Because and I don't even really know why. I think it's just like the closest thing to Otis that exists that isn't like Cal Arts, and Cal Arts is kind of like unattainable. I feel like it's kind of just like, oh, they're over there doing their thing like really well, and it's hard to even like get into contact with them, I guess. So Art Center is kind of the closest like analog that we have to Otis. And so like at Art Center they have a ton of like former Disney people over there, I guess. And so like they I've heard that they like will enforce the Disney art style on people a little bit and just like
That
really want it
sucks.
to. Yeah, it would be really hard, especially if you're not like coming from that background, because some people do. Like I have some friends who I feel like would probably do pretty well there because they can like fit into that a little bit, just like naturally, just where their style goes. Um, but I don't know. Like I don't think I could like um go into a box,
Yeah.
like I have my box, and my box overlaps with some other boxes sometimes. But I don't know. It would be difficult, but Otis isn't usually like that, I don't think. It kind of depends on where you are. I have friends in concept design, which is another big like part of the digital media umbrella, who feel a lot of pressure to be like one specific kind of way because of just trends that are happening in like concept art. Concept art is wild because you have to just do these like beautiful Rembrandt paintings like every single day, and I just can't even imagine. Like a lot of the stuff I do is so messy and incomplete, especially when it's storyboard. Like I can't imagine doing something that's finished.
Yeah. 'Cause, like with a lot of I don't really have, I'm a communications major. So
Cool.
I took one art class because I like art. I do this. Like I love art. I love meeting artists. I love this. I just can't physically do the art nicely. but I have this I had an art class. It was like intro to art, but it was all like black and white realism. And I was wondering if like I feel like realism and the forcing of putting like students to do realism art is probably such a struggle. I feel like with so many creatives out there.
Yeah, I definitely did not have the foundation for that when I was going into Otis. And the cool thing that Otis does is they have the foundation programs as your like first year. So you go in doing fundamentals as if you have not like taken a life drawing class before and stuff like that. So that's what the whole first year is. You're kind of you're in the same classes as everybody else. You're kind of doing the same thing as everybody else. And initially I was kind of just like, oh, I wish I could just like avoid that because I don't really, it was just kind of boring to me. I don't really want to like go through that gauntlet. But I think it was really necessary insofar as it just like it gave me a good introduction to those things. A lot of my peers had that backbone, like they had taken life drawing classes before, and even if you've taken one life drawing class, you had a leg up over where I was at the time. And so because I just draw cartoons, you know, like I never really felt like I had to care, and I had always heard the advice, which I think is true to a certain extent, that you have to like know the rules before you can break the rules, you know.
Yeah.
And so doing that kind of hyperrealism is useful in terms of like knowing the rules so that you can then exaggerate them and do all kinds of crazy stuff with them, which is what cartoons are. But like it's really hard to like that needs to be your avenue in, but like that avenue in is really difficult. Like
Yeah.
and it's hard to connect to because I just could not like get into life drawing. Just stressed me out, especially at the time, because we had these like 6-hour long life drawing classes. That's the way that foundation works, where we have these like 6-hour drawing classes every week, which now they're having to do over Zoom, which can, like, you even imagine that would be wild.
Yeah, no.
They're making it work, but you know, by the skin of their teeth. I admire the foundation department a ton. But like, yeah, it's I would always get stressed out by it because I was just like, I'm having to use like 1,000,000% of my brain right now. I feel like I'm gonna have an anxiety attack. You know,
Yeah.
I was just like, I have to be paying attention to like every single part of this person's body and like how everything is working, and then basically drawing them like half life size on this like giant piece of paper in front of me. And I'm like, this is not my wheelhouse.
Yeah, no, I'm scared that like if I draw like, because when I think of it of drawing life-size people, I'm like, do you have to imagine where the cells are going? Do you like draw? Like in my head, I'm like, I think I'm supposed to think about the veins and muscles if I have to draw a human. And then I start to think about where the blood cells are going. I'm like, this is too much.
Yeah, that's what I mean when I'm like using 100% of your brain, because like if you think too hard about it, you'll just explode, you know.
Yeah.
And so like the way that they do it at Otis, and also like most life drawing classes, from what I've seen from like an outsider's perspective, because like I only know the Otis version of this process, but like the way we did it is we basically just like, we started with loose gestures just to get like the direction of where things were going, and those are almost like stick figures at that point. And then from there we built up to bone structure, and then muscle structure, and then like skin and fat and stuff. And so we were essentially just like bringing a person like out of the ether, you know. And I see why that approach works, because I think it did work for us, or it worked for me, insofar as like, yeah, I'm kind of drawing inside of this person, like from the inside out, and so I understand how the volumes are working and stuff like that. But it definitely is even when you take it step by step like that, even when
Yeah.
you're only focusing on the bones, even when you're only focusing on the muscles, it's still just like how many muscles do you have in your body? How many bones do you have in your body? Hundreds. Like
Overwhelming.
it is overwhelming. It's overwhelming either way. Like even if you take it at a pace that is not supposed to be too rigorous, like it's overwhelming. And then part of foundation is that it is supposed to be rigorous. Like they do format it to be like this crazy gauntlet that you have to go through, and like this crucible that you have to overcome. And it's
It's the troll
you
across
know,
the bridge. It's like if you're a student at Otis, you literally have to fight this monster.
it kind of is like, and you know, I don't think it's a useless monster. I think it's a really useful monster. I also think that like as my introduction to life drawing, like I had the distinct impression after foundation year was over, like, okay, in order to be like actually good at this, I need like 8 more of those. You know, like
Yeah.
in order to be able to do what my life drawing teachers would do, because my life drawing teachers are just superhuman, because they do this every single day for
Yeah.
hours, for more than 6 hours, you know, at every day. And they are, their chops are good enough to where they're able to teach it. Like, can you imagine? And I just like barely scratched the surface of that. And yet, like, to my parents who don't really draw, they were seeing what I was doing, and they were like, this is incredible. And I was like, thanks. I can see everything that's wrong with it. And also, like, just my standards for that have just been completely blown out of the water.
Yeah.
The second a life drawing teacher came over my shoulder and fixed something that I did in 2 seconds perfectly without even having to like cite it or anything. I was just like, oh, okay. So I see now the extent of what this ability is, and it can feel overwhelming to like start.
Yeah.
And it definitely did for me. I was self-conscious about it for sure. I think everybody was.
Yeah. I know for mine, they had us draw a, this is similar in the sense of like if you feel like you have to know the rules before you can break it, but we
Mhm.
had to draw this like Polaroid. But I was so bad at drawing that it almost went in my favor. The teacher was like, saw this, and it was literally a stretched out kind of Polaroid. It was so bad. But he saw this, he was like, this is an intelligent view of how you could modernize the Polaroid. And like he said all of this stuff, he was like, this is just a really intelligent thing that would hang up on my wall of taking realism and extending it. But the whole time it was just me not knowing how to draw. That was like, I listened, I tried to do it, and this is what came out.
That's one of those like Bob Ross happy accidents. Yeah.
Literally.
So much of what I do is like unintentional. And so like whenever anybody thinks that I've thought about it a lot, it's always incredibly surprising to me, because I'm like, I don't know, I'm just like screwing around, you know, like that's really
Yeah.
funny.
Okay. So the actual questions I have for you that I wrote down are very off topic from this, but
Don't worry about it.
I saw that you have a zine. Well, one, are you still doing that zine? Is it still
Yeah,
out there?
I have a bunch of things. I'm all over the place as a person, so please feel free to like corral me back into place when necessary.
That's cool.
I know I'll need it. I appreciate it. But yeah, so like the first zine that I made, and kind of my ongoing like series of stuff, is called Key Smash. And the first one of those was based on this character that I had done, who's a pomegranate, and when they get anxious, they start like spilling seeds out of their mouth. Like they basically just vomit up a bunch of seeds, because you know how pomegranates have all those seeds. And I always thought that pomegranates were these like kind of visceral looking fruits. Like they looked very kind of, the seeds looked like red teeth to me. And so I just like I was like, I don't know this. And it was just a drawing that I did once, and then I decided to make it into a zine because I got like really interested in this character and how I could like use that as a metaphor for things. And that was also during my foundation year at Otis, and I was just feeling a lot of different stuff about because I'm an only child. I hadn't been like in a roommate situation really
Oh,
ever. I
yeah.
was a very sheltered person, partially by choice, but like uh, I was feeling all these things about like being in this new environment and like being close to people and like developing these like close relationships that were just kind of new to me at the time because I just
Yeah.
feel like I hadn't been a person. And so I kind of channeled that into Key Smash 1, which was comics, only a couple of comics. I ended up, Key Smash has more comics in it now, but it was only a couple comics. It was mostly poetry,
Yeah.
which is also something that I do. I started getting into that sort of recently, like especially compared to when I made Key Smash 1. Like I got into poetry in like high school, kind of by accident. I hadn't really written any before. I mostly did like narrative stuff, and
Mhm.
then I got into this creative writing class in high school, and pretty much everybody was doing poetry, and it was kind of set up like a poetry class where we would like go up and read our poetry and get notes
Yeah.
on our poetry. And so I was just like, oh, didn't really sign up for this. Also, like at the end of that year, we did this like crazy show where we like got in front of people or like our
Oh.
parents and like read our angsty poetry, which is like mortifying. And so I was like, this is like absolutely not what I signed up for. But I stuck with it just because a lot of my friends were in there and they were like encouraging me to like try it out. And so I did it, and that's kind of how I understood that like that's an art form that I can like express myself in.
Yeah.
And so I, with Key Smash 1, I structured it kind of like an album. Like I wanted it to be each poem was just kind of like a piece of this story, and also they kind of like stood on their own as being about something, kind of like a song
Mhm.
is. And so yeah, I made Key Smash 1, and then I, in November of like 2018, I had this like lump on my neck over here.
Was it
And I
like a
was like, that's
cyst?
weird. I thought it was like a cyst, but I was like, I don't know what this is. And so I went to the doctor for it, and I'm like a pretty bad hypochondriac. In the past, I have gone to the doctor over pretty much nothing, thinking that it was like cancer, and
Yeah.
then and just like forced people to take me to the doctor, just because I got too worried about it. I'm an anxious person, so I in the past there was precedent for that kind of behavior. So I I went to the doctor, and basically it was like a lymph node that was inflamed because well, they didn't know why. And so they did a bunch of like tests and ultrasounds on me and stuff, and I was just being like passed over from doctor to doctor. Not really that much in the grand scheme of things, but it was a lot for me. And also
Yeah.
just like as a person who's worried about stuff, it was a lot for me. But basically, like it ended up being mono. They thought it was so stupid. They thought it was like they were like, there's a chance that this is lymphoma, like early signs of lymphoma,
Oh my
but we want to
God.
like, yeah, and they like told it to me like that, and I was like, geez. And so and in my brain I'm just like, my anxiety was correct
Yeah.
for once. uh and so I had a lot of feelings about that. But basically, like, yeah, it ended up being nothing. It was so stupid, and the whole experience of that, and like going through the medical system. I have insurance, so I'm lucky that I am not like completely debilitated by that process. But it was still really stupid and
Yeah.
like absurd in a lot of areas, and so I made Node a Key Smash story, which is kind of like the second Key Smash thing, and it takes place in the same sort of universe where there's like fruit and vegetable people, and I was basically just like telling the fictionalized version of that story, but instead of me, it was a cauliflower character named Dan, and so I got to do a lot of like crazy emotional projection stuff there. And I call it a zine, but it really is very much like not. It's a on my online storefronts and stuff, I've been calling it a graphic novella, because it's like 50 something pages. So like
Oh,
it's not quite a comic book,
right.
but like it's mostly a comic book. And there are a few poems like in Key Smash 1, like scattered throughout it, but the comics outweigh the poems in this one. And then I made another Key Smash thing called keysmash.exe, and that was with characters from Node and then from the first Key Smash. And I was kind of like bridging the gap between those two. And it was just this like, it was entirely a comic, and it was just this like crazy video game vaporwave
Yeah.
thing that I just felt like doing at the beginning of quarantine. And then I also made Hot Garbage, which is a Key Smash game using like another character from that universe, and that's like a whole other thing. It's basically just like an interactive like fiction game.
You got
kind
the
of like a
whole
choose your own
Marvel
adventure
universe in here.
It's like I just get way out of hand with things, and that's sort of my personality in a nutshell. But yeah, that's Key Smash in the short long version. And yeah, it started out as zines. Now it's a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
I want to bring it back to the zine form. Like I have this big crazy idea for Key Smash 2. Like I haven't been numbering them really. Like they've kind of been marketed quote unquote as like spin-offs almost. And so it's kind of I always think of like Kingdom Hearts and how they took forever to get to like Kingdom Hearts 2 and then Kingdom Hearts 3. There's like a bajillion in the middle and nobody knows what's happening. That's what Key Smash is rapidly becoming, kind of against my will. But but also, I mean, I don't know why I feel like I don't have agency over it because I do. But, like I'm making these decisions. But anyway, I have other zines. I have a couple of zines that are like a bunch of illustrations of a character named Himbo that I made an animated like short film about in my junior year. And he's like a little guy with big legs. And I wanted to make this like sort of body positivity zine. And so it's just a bunch of like pictures of him in funny poses and like platitudes about liking your body. Because I've struggled with that in the past, and I think a lot of my friends do. So I wanted to make something nice. So I made a couple of those, and then what else? That's kind of it in terms of my zine stuff. But I've only done a physical print run of the first Key Smash, which is only like 12 pages long. And you know, I still have a bunch of those. You can buy them if you want on my various, you know, online storefronts.
Where?
It's expensive. I have an Etsy. I have an itch where you can buy like a digital version of
You need a
my
link
stuff.
tree.
Yeah, I do need a link tree. I've kind of been using my website. Like I have my own website and it's very like HTML-y and
Is it on your
silly, but
bio?
like yeah, it's kind of everywhere. I think I actually have something else in my bio right now, but I try to keep my links like up um and just kind of redirect everybody to my tuckerwooley.com. It's just my name.com.
Okay.
Uh which is kind of a hub for everything else. It kind of links out to everything else and people can kind of just like go down the rabbit hole if they want to. Print of a lot of other things because my stuff runs pretty long. Like pretty much everything that isn't Key Smash One and the Himbo zines run pretty long. So like it's hard to print like a 50 something page
Yeah.
graphic novel type book. Or it's just expensive and you know I have no money. So what I've been doing on the side is making stickers and a few prints and stuff. Um, and that's what I wanted to kind of like highlight with Cyberscape,
Mm-hmm.
because I I have an Etsy and I sell stuff on there. I print them all out here at home on my printer, and I cut them out also, which is um, I did it originally as like a money saving thing, but the the good might outweigh the bad. I'm still figuring that out. Um, you're on this journey with me a little bit for better and for worse. But yeah, like I print all my stickers, I cut all my stickers, and they're of various things. I have a bunch of like kind of Nintendo based like fan art stickers.
Yeah.
I have stickers of my own stuff. Um, and I like doing them because I can put them up for really cheap on my Etsy and then just like uh, be involved in the whole process of doing that rather than doing it through like a distributor and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
which usually costs money overhead, which is why I say it's kind of a money issue for me going in because it
Yeah.
was just like, I don't know if I want to, or if I even can like put something
Yeah.
down to do something through one of the sticker vendors, even though a lot of them are like independently run too. But like, uh, yeah, what else you got?
Well, I want to ask about, so you talk about the pomegranate. Is their named Key Smash?
The Key Smash is just kind of the name for the series, I guess.
Okay.
Um, their name is Delima, which is pomegranate in Indonesian. So they're a pomegranate named Pomegranate, which is stupid. I don't think I've told anybody that before, or just nobody has Googled it. But yeah, I came up with the name because I was just like, what's an easy name? But anyway, yeah, their name is Delima, and they're cool. They're kind of like all my characters are kind of like self-insert a lot of the time, but especially in Node, where um, the character was like a piece of cauliflower and like looked like this a little bit and like wore the same jacket that I wear and like I was just going whole hog on like the author insert like stuff with that one. But yeah, the Lima is a non-binary like art student. So there's also some of that with
Love.
with them. Uh so yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I know that you made a student comic about, I think it had your character like you drawn,
Mhm.
and it was about the loss of time in quarantine, if you know what I'm talking about. So
Yeah.
what have you found ways to like cope, or are you still dealing, with that problem?
That's definitely something that I'm still like contending with. I mean, I think it's just kind of a product of right now. We're all kind of playing the waiting game, uh,
Mm-hmm.
especially as like vaccines start to roll out. You know, I'm probably not going to get one until like July, because that's just how it seems to be shaking out
Yeah.
right now. But that's even that vague timetable is like way more of a timetable than I've ever had like in this whole process. So like we're just kind of like clinging on to anything we can. And yeah, I did that comic for Hourly Comics Day, which is the thing that like comics people on Twitter do on Groundhog Day every year. And it's something that I always want to participate in, but I never really like have caught on to it in the sense that it's just like it's hard to, because that it just becomes your whole day. Like even if your comics are about doing other stuff, like there will be some overlap where you have to draw a comic about making a comic, and then it's just sort of like I don't really know how to do this. Like it's a big time sink, and I'm usually like way too busy to do that anyway. So
Yeah.
like because there's so much work to do at Otis. I can't even stress that enough. Like no matter what major you're in, it's like a ton of stuff. But anyway, I wanted to do something kind of different than what I was seeing other people doing
Yeah.
with that comic, because it doesn't exactly go into like the autobiographical nature of my day as much as it's going into just like how I've been feeling
Yeah.
in general, and not even just that day, but just throughout quarantine. And yeah, it's been really hard to like ground myself in a time, especially when I'm like doing all this schoolwork here. It's a little bit easier on break, and I think when I made that comic, I had just like ended a break. And so I was kind of getting back into the routine of quote unquote going to classes and stuff. But it's a little bit weird when I pretty much don't go outside, and I'm just kind of like here hunched over my tablet all day
Yeah.
doing crazy stuff that I have to like devote all of my attention to. And I am like switching out from tab to tab. I have a million tabs open on my computer. If you saw it, you'd be afraid for me. But then just like the day just disappears. It just like melts out from under me, and I'm just like, what happened? And it's hard to like, even though classes make it a little bit easier because it's like this class is on this day, and so okay, now I know it's a Tuesday. Now it feels like a Tuesday because I'm having a Tuesday class on Tuesday morning and stuff like that. But even then, it's just like the classes are in these big 3-hour chunks usually, either 3 or 6 hours depending on the class. It's a lot, and like they've shortened them. Some classes are shorter now that they're over Zoom, because they're like, hey, you don't have to sit here for, little do they know, I sit there for hours anyway. I would be doing that either way. But yeah, like just huge swaths of time can just disappear, and definitely like the first really like 8 months of quarantine felt like pretty much the second I got out of school, and then was having the summer, I was just like, I'm gonna, like a lot of other people did, I was just like, I'm gonna bunker down, I'm gonna play Animal Crossing. I'm just gonna like let the time melt away from me, and it totally did. Like that 8 months felt like nothing, and that was just like a chunk of time where pretty much nothing was happening, and it was really weird. Like pretty much the only thing that like my parents and I were doing at that time, because I was at home, is we were trying to look for a dog, which we eventually did. And so like I can mark that time, I can mark the end of that time by us adopting our dog, but like pretty much everything in the middle of that is just like a complete blur. So it's hard, and think in terms of like what I've been doing to cope with that, school helps and it hurts because like I said, you can mark a Tuesday by what happens on a
Yeah.
Tuesday usually by the consistency, but also like
You have all this work and stress.
I just like dive into it and I totally tunnel vision and hyper focus on one thing and then 3 hours is gone. Like it's just gone.
Yeah.
And what I've been doing is I've just been I think it's really important as the work and like home life becomes completely the same, to like not let that happen as much as possible, or as much as it will continue to like serve you. But for me, I've noticed that like because I used to just like work on my laptop, and like a tablet on my lap, like in bed. I did that for a long time. But in addition to causing like some back problems for me and stuff, it was also just like my workspace is exactly the same as my sleep space. And maybe that's not a good thing. And I was just sort of like, maybe I'm one of those people who need to have those two spaces be different. And it turns out I kind of was. And so I started being at my desk and like, especially in this room that I'm in now, like this room is basically just a Murphy bed and a TV that's like mounted on the wall, like almost on the ceiling, and a closet. And my desk is in the closet, like because that's the only place for it.
Okay.
It's a wild setup that I have in here. And my room at home is a little bit like that too. It's just like a really small space. So like my desk is like 2 feet away from my bed, but the fact that I still have like my bed to go to when I go to bed and my desk to go to when I'm doing everything else, like there's still some differentiation, and that's been kind of a lifesaver for me because it's like I can differentiate these two spaces just like a tiny bit, you know? One is slightly cozier.
No,
And so
I
that's
get
how I
that.
know. Yeah.
So I saw from your account that you had like some pieces that were like realism. So what changed from the realism to your animated characters, which are so opposite of that?
Yeah, very much so. It's weird because like and again, I think that's kind of like the you have to know the rules in order to break them sort of thing.
Yeah.
But also like because I haven't really even had time to do that much light drawing after foundation year. And so like I was basically just doing it that 1 year. Like all that stuff is pretty much entirely from my freshman year in college. So like it was an introduction to those things, and because I was doing it a lot, that's kind of what I was posting at the time. But now that I've kind of like stopped having time to go to workshops even if I wanted to, which I have wanted to, but I just like it's just been dominated by stuff. And then when I'm at break, when I'm like at home on break, I don't really have access to that stuff. Or I would have to like pay money out of pocket to go to workshops, which is good to do if you can. But you know, I don't usually have those means. So like the pivot away from it was just sort of like I just stopped kind of doing those things altogether. Like I don't even really keep a sketchbook or anything. Pretty much everything that I post is like everything I draw, although there's a lot of it for the project that I'm working on now, which is like this crazy pitch book thing. Not everybody has seen everything from that because I'm kind of keeping it all until I release it. But
nice.
But even still, like I've posted a lot from that, and like a lot of my feed right now is stuff from that, and so I just kind of like post whatever I'm working on. So that's kind of why the pivot happened. Is just that like 2018 ended, you know?
Yeah. So this is the last question. If you could create a character in a fictional world, what would it be?
I have a lot of those already. It's it's hard. I think that I usually like making characters that are um an elaborate excuse for me to self-insert and like uh say something that I think is profound. Uh so you know, a lot of my characters tend to be really nervous like me, and usually pretty scrawny, although I'm trying to like branch out with the kind of body types that I work on, because I think it's good to have that range and
Yeah.
like diversity, um just in general, but also like as an artist drawing it. um but yeah, if the characters that I'm working on right now, for the pitch thing that I'm working on, um they're all very like larger than life, and like kind of obnoxious, and like uh they're also all technically like, or most of them anyway, are like bad guys. So I've been kind of like getting into that mindset, like what do
Yeah.
villains do and like and stuff, and like why do I find that compelling. And I think the reason why I find it compelling is because like um villains are often a lot more like driven and motivated than
Mm-hmm.
heroes are. Like they have
Yeah.
an ethos to like go by, and they just take that to its extreme, which usually involves like horrible violence or whatever. These guys are not like horrible people, but they're not like saints.
Yeah.
So like, you know, I have been really into giving my characters like incredibly strong motivations and stuff, uh because I feel like pursuing the career that I'm trying to pursue in being a storyboard artist, like it's an incredibly specific thing and an incredibly like
Yeah.
specific industry to break into. And you have to do a lot in order to get to that point. Um, you kind of these days have to become like a social media star in order to get your stuff seen, because that's just
That's
how
so true.
stuff gets boosted, is when you have a lot of followers, you know. um but like I I like to make my characters nowadays really like loud and obnoxious and like psychotically driven to a
Love.
goal, um because that's how I feel like I've been lately, for better and for worse. But yeah. And the thing that I'm working on right now is in like a fantasy setting, and so I'm really kind of like immersed in that right now, and looking at a lot of like D&D and Zelda stuff, um and also just like old school. Well, there's a lot of things that it's like drawing influence from, but the setting is mostly just like, yeah, kind of like a D&D like Mario type
Mm-hmm.
fantasy.
Yeah. I love that. Well, thank you so much for even participating.
Yeah.
Learning told me you were listening. I haven't felt sadness in my skin like this, and I miss it. Yeah, I miss it.